One of the things that I have thought about in this whole G teams development aspect is that when I'm pulling 9Gs, I'm looking over my shoulder, the blood is draining out of my head, I'm straining against the G suit, I'm trying to keep the blood pressure in my head at my eye level such that I don't black out. And that's an environment that I fly in, and that's an environment that I have to navigate, and I have to fly the airplane, I have to make radio calls, I have to employ ordnance, have to keep sight of the enemy, number one. And in the fighter community, we have this saying, it's called lose sight, lose the fight. Well, I think the same thing happens in business. Now, granted, you're not under 9Gs technically, or literally, I should say, but you are under 9Gs with a rapidly changing marketplace or worldwide pandemic or other factors that are playing into your business. And so you're navigating your business through your own environment of 9Gs. And if you lose sight, you lose the fight. So if you lose sight of your objective, you're going to lose the fight.
Hello, and welcome back to the Resilient Leader's Journey, a podcast where we navigate challenging currents of growth and change. Today, my guest is Major General, U.S. Air Force retired, Brian Bishop. Brian has an illustrious career for the U.S. Air Force, including leading the Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, which are the Thunderbirds. He's also the president of 9G Teams. 9G Teams is sustaining 9Gs, which is 9 times the force of gravity. Brian uses his real world and military leadership as a senior leader and fighter pilot to help companies build high-performing teams. Brian, thank you for joining. How are you today?
I am great. Thanks for having me, Trent. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely. Brian, of pilots in the world, who are you more impressed with, Chuck Yeager or Alan Shepard?
Ooh. I think Alan Shepard actually, because he didn't get the notoriety that Chuck Yeager did. Not that that's bad, but I do think that Alan Shepard is an unsung hero in the aviation industry.
He sure is. As most people know, he's the first person who went into space. Chuck Yeager would have been the first person to break the sound barrier. I thought as a pilot, you would have chosen Chuck Yeager just for the speed. Have you ever broken the sound barrier?
Absolutely have. In the T-38 during pilot training, you break the sound barrier. And I've done it a couple times in the F-16 too.
Oh, wow. And is there a different feeling between flying below the sound barrier and above that you can notice as a pilot?
Actually, you don't notice anything when you're flying. You might see the airspeed indicator just tick just a little bit as you go through the sound barrier, but from a pilot standpoint, you don't notice anything. And if you think about it, you don't have any reference for the speed. So if you get in an airliner and you look out the window and there's no clouds next to you, you can't tell that you're traveling 500 plus miles an hour. Same thing, breaking the sound barrier. If you don't have some sort of frame of reference next to you to show you that how fast you're going, you just really can't tell except by looking at the airspeed indicator.
I see. Did you make a TikTok video while you were in the air? That way everybody in the world would know about it?
The TikTok comes well after my flying days, so no, I wasn't able to do that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you. I want to talk to you a little bit about your 9G program. I would imagine that your experiences both in the military and lead in several tours of duty really can help companies and help develop teams. How do you go about that? What's your process?
So one of the things that I have thought about in this whole 9G teams development aspect is that when I'm pulling 9Gs, I'm looking over my shoulder, the blood is draining out of my head, I'm straining against the G suit, I'm trying to keep the blood pressure in my head at my eye level such that I don't black out. And that's an environment that I fly in, and that's an environment that I have to navigate, and I have to fly the airplane, I have to make radio calls, I have to employ ordnance, have to keep sight of the enemy, number one. And in the fighter community, we have this saying, it's called lose sight, lose the fight. Well, I think the same thing happens in business. Now, granted, you're not under 9Gs technically, or literally, I should say, but you are under 9Gs with a rapidly changing marketplace or worldwide pandemic or other factors that are playing into your business. And so you're navigating your business through your own environment of 9Gs. And if you lose sight, you lose the fight. So if you lose sight of your objective, you're going to lose the fight. And so kind of the things that I talk about in my keynote are one, the entire team has to be built and aligned around a common mission objective, common vision, common objective. What are you trying to do? What is it that your business is trying to do? And this is really your why. The second piece that I talk about is resources. And when I talk about resources, I'm not talking about just adding more money to the problem or throwing money at the problem. It's more than that. It's what are those things that are resources that you can use to help you in your business? What are the things that you do to help your team grow? What are the, are there aspects of the business that help your teams to understand what you're trying to do and understand the why? And then finally, I really dive into the you. Everybody says there's no I in teams, but there is an M, there is an E, which spells me. And you have to really understand, one, how do you fit into that team? Because you bring a special piece to it, and you bring a special way of thinking, and you bring a special aspect to the team. How do you build and capitalize your piece on everybody else's? And then lastly, everybody says, or I've had many bosses say, Brian, you just give me 110% every day and we'll be good. Well, you can't give 110% every day. I mean, you can only give 100. And, I think if you're given about 70% over the course of a year every day, you're probably doing pretty well. You can't always bring your A game. You can't always come in fully energized. Life takes over. There are family aspect things. There are things that are going on in your community. There are things going on at work. There's things go on in the news every day that drain people down. So what are the things you need to do to put fuel back in your tank so that you can try to bring the best version of yourself each and every day?
A few excellent metaphors there. I want to start with the 9G of pressure. And while business people may not actually feel 9Gs, they certainly do under certain situations. Pressures that come from deadlines, other commitments that they have to make. And
Absolutely.
so, how do you talk to teams about making commitments, honoring commitments, and the like?
So it really, for me, it boils back down to your mission. It boils down to why you're doing it. And if you're not considering in every action that you make within your business why you're doing it, then you're probably missing something. So
True.
if you're going to hire somebody, make sure you're hiring them and make sure they understand why you're doing it. So on the Air Force Thunderbirds, everyone thinks we hire the best pilots out there. That's not true. When we go through the interview process, we look at the best pilots that's going to fit the best with the current team or with the future team that they're going to. We have about 130 members on the team. 6 of them are demonstration pilots. We change half of the demonstration pilots every year. So 3 demonstration pilots change out every year. Think about that in your business.
Sure.
We change a third of the total squadron out every year. So if you think about that kind of turnover in your business, you'd really start looking at, okay, why am I hiring this person? Does this person really understand the why of what we're doing? Same thing in making, I think, resource allocations. If you're not, if you're spending money and it's not directly supporting the why of what you're doing, then that's, in my opinion, that's money that's not well spent. Or if you're doing an action or going to a meeting and you don't understand why you're doing that and it's not supporting your overarching why, then you're probably taking action that you shouldn't be taking. And so when you're making commitments, make sure that you understand why you're doing it and does it support your underlying why and your mission.
If I understood you right, you have a 1/3, 33% turnover in your Thunderbird annually. And I'm curious
Yes.
as to 2 reasons. One is it because you don't like left-handed pilots, or second, I'm curious how you maintain trust in that because the new person in hasn't developed the same precise level of trust. I'm sure they're excellent pilots, maybe not the best, but the trust between the other flyers to bring a new person in. How do you develop that?
So we have a training program that starts at about the middle of late October to the middle of November, and it runs through the middle of March. And we fly hundreds of missions, hundreds of sorties, where the initial sortie, so you have a new pilot come on board, let's say it's the right wingman. You'll go out and you'll start at 5,000 feet above the ground, and all you're going to do is fly loops and rolls, loops and rolls, loops and rolls. And if you really look at a jet team, a formation jet team's demonstration, each maneuver is a loop or a roll or a combination of the two. And so you're establishing the muscle memory. And so as the lead, I would make a radio call. So let's say we're going to go do a loop. You go, smoke on, ready now. Nose coming up 450. smoke on, ready now. You turn the smoke on the on the N of now, not on the O, not the S, not the E, the N of now. And then when I say nose, that's when we start the pull. And I'm going to try to make the same pull every time. Right on into 4. There's 4. That's 4 Gs. Into the
Sure.
float, you float the top, and then you come back around the backside and you're making radio calls to that. So I'm telling them everything that I'm going to do before I do it. And what it does is it sets up a muscle memory in my hand, and then it sets up an ability for them to predict and be ready for whatever the maneuver is. So if you think about driving a car and you pull up to a stoplight and all the cars are stopped, and then the light turns green, and then they start to go. There's this accordion effect, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want that accordion effect in the demonstration. We want it to look like one airplane. And even though it's 4 or 6 airplanes flying together, we want it to look like one. So by being able to anticipate, if you knew when that car was ahead of you was going to start, you could actually anticipate and start getting on the accelerator so that you could pull off together at the same time. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Sure.
And we fly hundreds of sorties. We do loops and rolls, loops and rolls, loops and rolls. Then we start bringing it down as our confidence gets better and as the trust gets better. Finally, to bringing it down to 200 feet ish above the ground, where the solos are down about 75 feet sometimes. And then once you've developed that confidence, you can now work it down, and that's where the trust comes in. And
Wow.
so over the course of about 3.5 months, you really develop a good trust. And then at the beginning of the season, we're not flying the closest formation. So even as the season goes on, we're getting better and better and better. So we fly closer and closer and closer towards the end of the season.
And then you lose another pilot the next year. And,
Yeah.
and start the process building into a new pilot. Do you have for the maneuvers that you do in a show, do you have a checklist for those? Or is it more like a concert pianist will just roll off he knows Beethoven's Ninth and can play from there?
Oh, no. No, it's very scripted, and we design the show to bring energy and emotion, and we try to design the music behind it to bring emotion into the show as well. And really what we're trying to show the public is the precision, the excellence, the commitment, the loyalty, the dedication that all servicemen and women have across the United States. And that's what the demonstration is trying to show. And it is, like I said, it's very scripted. There are very specific parameters. So when I said smoke gun ready now, nose coming up 450, 450 is the entry airspeed for a loop. And if you don't have 450 knots, you have to abort that loop. And so we have safety gates that we've got to meet in each maneuver as well.
Sure. After you graduated from the Air Force Academy with aeronautical engineering as a degree, a short time later, you went and studied for a Master's of Business Administration. Why does a fighter pilot need a Master's of Business Administration?
So the Air Force values education. And one of the things that they try to encourage us to do is take on a life of continuous learning. Getting a master's degree is instrumental in the promotion system. It shows that you are willing to continue to learn. It shows that you're willing to explore different things and keep pushing yourself. And so as part of the promotion cycle, almost every Air Force officer will get a master's degree of some sort.
I see. Did you prefer macro or microeconomics?
I didn't prefer economics at all.
Yeah. Not too many science-based courses in those those classes. No. So you have to have a significant amount of confidence in to be a pilot, particularly at the speeds you're at. And so what role does self-confidence play in your leadership?
I think that as a leader, you need to be confident. You need to display a sense of confidence so that the subordinates and your bosses and your peers can see there's a level of trust that you're building there. And but if you're confident in what you're doing, I think that helps display that. But you've got to balance that with, you don't want to be overconfident, right? You don't want to be seen as, I know everything and you're going to have to do it my way no matter what. So you have to really balance that with, I think, a healthy dose of humility. And being humble is more than just saying I'm sorry or just say, it's in your actions too. It's how do you interact with the people around you? And one of the things that I used to do with my command chief, we would walk around the base and we wouldn't tell anyone where we're going. We just walk into a work center somewhere because, when the wing commander walks in, or if everyone knows the wing commander or the boss is coming, they're going to clean up their workspace. So we wanted to just go and surprise them. So my command chief and I would walk in to talk to some airmen in the, the phase shop or in the dental clinic or, maybe in finance or something. And we just sit down and say, hey, so tell me about your day today. What are you doing? And listen, just listen to them. And you find that after you break the ice and you do it in their workplace, they start to interact with you more and they start to understand you. And then there are times you can maybe help communicate one of your messages at the same time. Or more importantly, what I would typically ask them is, what did you do for the mission of the wing today? So at at Kunsan Air Base, the 8th Fighter Wing, I'd say, what did you do for the Wolfpack today to support the mission? And you get some really crazy answers sometimes, but more often than not, these young men and women were out there and they understood why we were there and why we were doing what we were doing. And then they would tell you what they did for the mission today. It was really good.
Very interesting story about how that happens. And you're right. There is a line between confidence and overconfidence. Tom Wolfe wrote about the right stuff, which I think you certainly have. But how do you? There's a line. Have you seen pilots that cross that line to it's overconfidence? It's that too much swagger and not willing to bring a team with them. And how would you, as a leader, help that person?
Well, and that's inherent, I think, in the aviation community, a lot in the fighter pilot community. There's a sense of swagger. There's an old school fighter pilot mentality sometimes. And I think every one of us, myself included, has gone out and done something stupid in an airplane. And I'm just lucky that nothing happened when I did it and I was able to get through it. Some other pilots haven't been quite so lucky when they do that.
Sure.
And so when you find somebody like that, you really have to sit them down and talk to them and say, okay, what are you really trying to do? We find that around the 500-hour mark, pilots have this tendency to become, I'm better. They think they're better than they really are.
Oh, I see.
Same thing happens around the 1,000-hour mark. And so, when you get pilots and you start watching them and they're flying on your wing or they're leading you around in a formation, and you start to see that, we take care of a lot of that in the debrief. And the debrief is probably the most important tool that, as fighter pilots, we use to learn from and to correct ourselves and make sure that we're watching out for each other. Our debriefs, we call them nameless and rankless. So even though I retired as a major general, if I was on the wing of a young lieutenant and this lieutenant was my flight lead and the lieutenant pointed something out in the debrief that I did wrong, it's, yes, Lieutenant, you're exactly right. I will strive to do better next time. And the same thing happens if I point out to the lieutenant. We have a nameless, rankless culture in our debriefs so that you can bring forward those ideas. And again, it's not about criticizing the person. It's about a factual result of what happened during the mission. Right. We missed hitting our target. That is a factual end of result. Now, why did we miss it? Maybe because I misidentified the target. And now I have to do a better job of target study next time and going big to small trying to find the target. But it is a factual thing that happened as a result. And then we debrief to that.
Wonderful. This 500 hours, which I understand you have over 3,900 hours, if I read right. The same thing happens in CEOs, that they gain this type of hubris. They may have had several M&As that work successfully for them, and they gain this extra level of swagger that they can go out and do more. And they're doing it with shareholder money. They run into a very similar problem sometime. If I think of like Tyco with Dennis Koslowski, and continually overbuying because everything he touched was gold. So everything he will touch will be gold. But this concept of no name, no rank is a wonderful way to bring everybody back down, to the church of now to say, okay, where are we on our mission?
Right. And then I think sometimes when you get overconfident, like in your CEO example, you're not willing to listen to other ideas.
Sure.
And that I think is a big trigger when I start not listening to other ideas, or I walk into the room and I throw my solution on the table first. What does everyone do when the boss throws his or her solution out first? They gravitate to that because that's what they think the boss wants. And and walking into a room and being a boss and not being the first one to speak sometimes is hard, but you really need to do that to draw out other ideas from the rest of your team.
It's very easy to watch the other people in the room switch off when the boss walks in and sounds definitive, because for two reasons. One is the other people on the team don't have to work as hard. And secondly, they don't own it. They don't own the solution.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so one of my leadership things that I have 10 rules of leadership, and one of them is find a way to say yes. Because as a boss, it's too easy to say no. If somebody comes in with a harebrained idea or what sounds like a harebrained idea, and it's easy to say no. No, we don't want to do that.
Mhm.
I had a young airman when I was in Iraq as the wing commander, and this young airman walked in and he said, my command chief prepped me first. He said, "Hey, sir, this airman wants to come in. This airman wants to talk to you about doing Muay Thai fighting and do it in a controlled way." And I'm like, I don't get into this kickboxing stuff. I don't want us to be hurting each other. That this does not sound like a good idea. My chief said, "Sir, just take a listen." And so this airman came in and briefed me, and it was obvious that he had thought through everything and was trying to be safe about it. And they were doing pads and everything that they needed to do to keep it safe so we wouldn't hurt each other. And even though I wanted to say, no, we're not doing that, saying yes, that airman walked out of that office and
I'm
was
sure.
on cloud
I
nine.
bet.
It was
I
like,
can
I
imagine.
can't believe the boss just said yes. And I
Right.
was a one-star general, a brigadier general at the time. And he was a young, I think a senior airman or an airman first class. So the rank difference is about as far as it could get at that installation. And he walked out of there and was so proud and so happy and went off and put on a great program.
Very cool. How real is Top Gun Maverick? Can you get into that tight space?
There's some reality in it, and then there's quite a bit of Hollywood literary license, which is good, and that's what makes the movie exciting and fun. And you know, we joke around. Here's Maverick and Goose just pulling 9Gs, and their mask is kind of hanging off the side. Hey, Goose, what are you going to do today? Oh, I think we'll go to the bar tonight. It doesn't quite happen that way. No,
Yeah, but you can't see Tom Cruise's face with his mask on, so
exactly, exactly.
that's funny. I have one last question for you,
So,
General. Who's your favorite fictional character?
um, I think maybe Captain America.
Oh, why is that?
Um, Well, it's the sense of the American dream. It's a sense of duty. It's why I spent 32 years in the Air Force, protecting our Constitution and protecting this republic that is so fragile. And it's a sense of what we all as Americans are and who we are. I went to a big event in Washington D.C. one year, and they were honoring a lot of business leaders, and they honored Bono from U2.
Okay.
And he came out there and he started talking, and I was a little bit worried that he was going to go off the rails somewhere because it was a half military family there and half civilian. And he started talking about the trinkets and the sparkly things on our uniforms. But he said, you know what? He says, you all as Americans, you represent a dream, and you can't forget that. You can't forget that the rest of the free world, the rest of the world, actually, I would argue, looks up to us and looks up to us for guidance.
Sure.
And so Captain America, I think, kind of exemplifies that to a certain extent.
That is an outstanding answer, General. And for the people that listen to my podcast, and I've mentioned a few times, I have a deep reverence for men and women that serve, and particularly like you that have served over 30 years. And I respect the sacrifice that you made all the way
Thank you.
along. And I know the audience greatly appreciates it. And I want to thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, friend. Thanks for having me.
Folks, resilient leaders face challenging currents, and it's tough navigating. But with one tack or another, we'll get there together. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your digital media. Like us on LinkedIn, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, folks.